Your skull is leaking. My wife was cradling her coffee cup and leaning against the threshold of the door, staring at me with sleepy eyes. I had been up all night editing a report for my job. The report for my job and other personal details aren't really important. All that I need you to know right now are her words, which she said so casually as if they had instead been, "You've been up all night." I responded, as you'd expect. "What?" With a chuckle and heel. She shrugged, walking off, and a few minutes later, I heard the shower run. I dismissed the comment, attributing it to the post-sleep mental muddiness, the residual incoherent ramblings of a dream. The day progressed, and neither of us brought up the strange comment. The next day I was in our living room connecting a tablet that I had bought that morning to the Wi-Fi, when my wife walked past me and said, "Plug up that hole. You'll drown us all." This, of course, was just as weird. And when I looked at her, I felt especially unnerved because she was dressed in a hoodie and sweatpants that she wore while jogging. She hadn't just woken up. I again questioned her, and that time she looked at me with a face full of malice, as if I'd been committing a crime, and inquired as to why I should stop. She then walked away, leaving me puzzled and admittedly hurt. Neither of us spoke of it for the rest of the day, and she behaved as if it hadn't even occurred. The third incident is when things became violent. Our power had gone out in a pretty violent storm, and I had set up candles throughout the house. We owned an abundance of them, owed to my wife's love of fruity scents, but only one flashlight. And I was on the couch reading a book on the tablet when I saw my wife's silhouette standing in the doorway, which led into the kitchen. She didn't have the candle I'd given her, so I asked if something was wrong. She didn't respond for a while, which unsettled me, though initially because I thought that she had hurt herself in the dark. What made me scared, truly uneasy, was her breathing, which was deep and plainly controlled. She'd been restraining herself, quelling some emotion that would have otherwise been bursting forth. And after a particularly audible exhalation, she spoke. "If you don't seal up that fucking hole, I'll do it for you. God damn it, Alan, I can't swim through all this shit anymore." I learned from the first two occurrences that responding was pointless. So I just sat there, petrified. Well, she glared at me through the darkness, but this time she didn't walk away. Her breathing didn't relax, and still, in that crazed state of mind, she said, Well, are you gonna do it? Or are you too weak?" I jumped to this. Not exactly at the vulgar suggestion, but because for an instant, some fraction of a second, I heard someone else's voice in concert with my wife's. "What is wrong with you?" I tried not to sound scared, but failed pathetically. My voice trembled. I was perched on the seat of the couch like a frightened cat. My wife walked towards the coffee table in front of the couch, and before I could comprehend what she was planning, she had leapt over the table, seized me, and forced me onto my back. When I realized what she intended to do, cauterized the hole in my head, I struggled against her like a madman, but in her enraged state, she had summoned a strength that impossibly dwarfed my own. She brought the tip of the candle slowly down so as to not extinguish the flame, and burnt my forehead just above my left eyebrow. And despite the size of the flame, the pain was still unbearable. I begged her to stop, but she just snarled and muttered that I brought it on myself with my procrastination, and she acceptedly sealed the hole. She dismounted me and returned the candle to its holder on the table. She walked off into the darkness of the hall and didn't return for the rest of the night. I regained some of my composure and sat on the couch for the rest of the night, numbed, unthinking, traumatized. And the next morning she asked how it felt. I told her I was fine. We ate breakfast, we went on our respective jobs, returned home and ate dinner, and then we watched the show together. It was a normal day. And the next incident I can only partially remember. See, I'd been sleeping beside her on our bed, and something in my subconscious, some primal alert of danger, told me to wake up. And when I did, I found my wife looking at me, her face full of sorrow. When our eyes met, she said, "You've got more leaks." They've spread all over. I can't close all of those. And then she rolled away from me, placing her head on her pillow. I was about to do the same when she said, "I won't let you drown me." And again, I heard that same vocal duality, this time in tone with immense sadness. I got out of the bed, I put on a jacket, I left the house, I drove to a 24-hour grocery store. Sat in the parking lot wide awake while the burn in my head throbbed in remembered agony. At this point, you're probably wondering why I didn't just go to the authorities. I didn't report the domestic violence. I mean, especially considering the suggestion of more. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. When dawn arrived, I returned home. And upon seeing me, my wife casually asked, "Do you find what you're looking for?" I called her a bitch. I got in the shower, locking the door beforehand, of course. I brought my clothes into the bathroom with me, something I didn't usually do just because I didn't want to traverse the halls while so plainly vulnerable. She had said that I had leaks all over, and I didn't want to risk so much bodily exposure. Now, I decided to Google the thing that she had said. I found nothing of relevance to me or our lives. I considered that she was just insane, suffering from some randomly emergent psychosis or some other illness of the mind which caused her to see leaks in people. I even considered that I was the one with which something was wrong, even going so far as to examine myself for tiny holes. I, of course, found none. I decided that I'd try to anticipate the exact moment she acted and try to restrain her, then interrogate her about what was going on. The results of this interrogation, I reasoned with myself, would influence my decision on whether or not I needed to go to the authorities or simply contact a psychiatrist. So I didn't have a chance to stop her when it finally happened. I was in the living room. The open space was a comfort compared to the bedroom, applying some ointment to my wound, and even though the softest touch elicited a pain that made me wince, when my eyes closed for just a second, I felt a warm arm wrap around my neck and my wife's breath in my ear. She pinned me against the wall and it fell back onto the couch so that I sat forced against her lap, in her other hand with a knife which she sank into my stomach. My hands immediately shot to the arm around my neck, but I was powerless to relieve the vice. When the blade entered my flesh, I tried to push her hand away, but I was again met with an insurmountable resistance. "See how it spills out of you? You're such a mess. I've been stepping in puddles all day." But you thought my wife's bizarre behavior was terrifying. I'm sure you can imagine my horror at seeing nothing come out of my body. As the knife slowly, painfully carved up my abdomen, no liquid escaped my wound. Disgusting, isn't it? How it just gushes out. You're lucky I care so much. Anyone else would have been bothered with the bloodletting. There was mockery and self-assuredness in her voice, and the other voice, which before had just been barely audible beneath her own, was now just as prominent. See, I don't remember anything else about that day beyond that moment that I came to the next day, sitting on a lawn chair in my brother's backyard. He lived 45 minutes away by car, but I hadn't taken my car. I examined myself, my still bloodless wound. I panicked. My brother heard me screaming. He took me to an emergency room. I didn't answer his battery of questions. I didn't answer the staff's questions either. They sewed me up. My brother went and brought back my wife. She hadn't been answering calls, and she arrived with all this worry and shock you'd expect of her, as if she hadn't been responsible for the wound. And the weirdest thing, the really unsettling part is that at some point I had started bleeding, just gushing this stuff, so neither my brother nor the hospital staff saw what I had seen. It was a normal wound for them. The police were called, of course, not my request, but due to the nature of the wound, it was at least obvious that I'd been stabbed, that a blade had been inserted and drawn up my gut. The burn mark on my forehead was still plainly visible as well. I didn't even hint at my wife's responsibility. I was too freaked out. But this bloodless wound, I wanted to question her privately, even more than before. Police had no evidence, which would suggest it was my wife's fault. They never found any bloodstains. No bloodstained blade, at least when I relented to their requests to search the home. I went from total silence to I don't remember, which was responded with, "We could protect you if you tell us what happened." and my wife expectantly feigned ignorance. Eventually, the police withdrew their insinuations and questions. I returned the next day with my wife. She looked after me like a saint. She didn't ask how I got the wound. She already possessed that knowledge, and it somehow was no emotional distress for her. For a week, she didn't mention any leaks or holes or fractures, fissures, which poured forth something, which actually let loose nothing. And while I didn't forget what had happened, I thought that we had finally moved past it. I had abandoned my desire to ask questions for fear of reigniting the mania, ire. Shortly after that brief return to normal, my wife came running into me, soaking wet, crying that now she was leaking. Initially, I thought it was some morbid joke that she had just decided to mess with me and drench herself but something about the way that she was wet, the appearance of the liquid was uncanny, unlike water in some ways I can't describe. Yet, beyond that, it just looked too wet. I mean, in some lizard brain way, I sensed that the water was inimical. "Please, help me," she whimpered. She whimpered this over and over. As she buried her head in my chest, I didn't know what to do. And something about the damned wetness repulsed me. I gripped her by the shoulders, I looked in her eyes, and I asked her everything that I wanted to ask for the last month. What did she mean that I was leaking? Why? Why, when she stabbed me, did I not bleed? How was she leaking? Was she crazy? Was I? It all came out at the same point. My voice had risen to thunderous shouting as she eventually pulled away from me, still sobbing, and fell onto her butt on the floor. "It's all over. They can't patch me up. You certainly can. I'll burst and I'll drown in myself." Her voice was hoarse, her eyes redder than the blood that should have spilled out of my gut a week before, and her whole body shook in disconcerting spasms. I didn't know what to do, how to console her, and part of me didn't even care. It was my wife, sure, but she had also nearly eviscerated me, and afterwards acted like she had done me a favor. So I did the only thing I could do. I left. I didn't pack anything. I didn't linger any longer in that house than I had to. I grabbed my phone, keys, wallet, jacket. I drove away to my brother's house. I live with him now. It's been 3 days. Haven't heard from my wife or the police. My brother assumes that my stay with him is due to me finally building up the courage to let her go, free myself from her abuse. He hasn't the faintest idea of the truth, although I can't say that I have all the facts either. Yesterday, while my brother and I were organizing some stuff in the garage to make room for my car, I noticed that his skin seemed distinctively damp. I thought it at first to be sweat, but it was late fall. The garage was considerably cooler, and neither of us had exerted ourselves enough to warrant perspiration, but still, I could see little beads of liquid on his arms, and there were streaks of something trailing down the side of his face. I didn't mention it to him. He didn't say anything either. And earlier today, I was still making breakfast, and I stepped in a puddle of water. I assumed it had been there from the sink. Perhaps it spilled a bit of water when I went to fill up the coffee maker, but something about that puddle, something about it just felt wrong. Felt too wet. And as I considered this, I thought that my skin felt unusually porous. I hadn't showered yet, but I felt so, for lack of a better word, permeable. So I didn't know what any of it means, if it means anything at all, but I think that at some point later today, I should go back home and I should visit my wife. See, my visions have become almost imperceptibly altered. As I'm submerged in eerily clear water and everything sounds dull and delayed. And strangely distant. Yes. Yes, I think I will visit my wife. We always think we know who our friends are. I mean, hell, I'd known my best friend Martin for the better part of 2 decades. After what I saw today, though, I know that I had no clue who he really was, what he was capable of. I started working at his company about a year ago. Before that, I'd been working here and there as a freelancer, barely scraping by. As a university dropout, I didn't have much of a choice. I'd try anything in the hopes of making it big, but whatever I did, things never took off. The day I turned 30, I was still living in the same crappy one-room apartment, still eating ramen noodles for dinner 5 times a week. I knew I needed to reevaluate my life. It was on a night out with Martin after a half-dozen beers that I started to lament about my situation. See, he listened, and once I was done, he offered me a job at his trading company. After his dad had retired, he'd taken over the family business and reconstructed it from scratch. He was starting to earn some real money, and he said that he could use a few helping hands. I agreed pretty much instantly. To be honest, I never thought that I ended up selling cans of soup at a farmer's market, even if it's the fancy kind. After I'd proved that I was handling the job well enough, Martin put me in charge of our logistics. It's not as fancy as it sounds. I pretty much just take care of our small warehouse, the monthly trips out to our suppliers, and handle the occasional delivery. We had a few customers, Martin explained, who ordered our product in bulk. As a sign of our gratitude, we offered to deliver the product in person. Sometimes it meant a small detour after the market for the day had ended. At other times, the customer would pick up his order at the market. It was all pretty standard stuff, business as usual, you could say. I never thought anything about it. And that is until today. See, Martin had sent me a message instructing me to take care of another delivery. The customer would pick it up in the late afternoon around the time the market ended. Attached to the message was an image of one of our cardboard boxes standing in the middle of the warehouse. In the morning, I put the cardboard box into the van and secured it between the parts of our market stand. Today was a slow day. After an almost 2-hour drive to a small town in the middle of nowhere, I set up my market stand as usual. Apart from me and a handful of other traders, the market was completely deserted. Now, I wondered why Martin even sent me out here. There was no way that we could turn a profit. And hell, we already spent a small fortune on the gas driving here alone. The hours passed painfully slow, but eventually, dusk arrived, and the market came to an end. I was about to pack up when an expensive station wagon came to a stop right behind the market stand. A well-kept older man stepped outside. He had an aura of self-importance about himself, and his outfit probably cost way more than I earned in a month. He scanned the area for a moment before he hurried over. As I watched him get closer, I could tell that there was something off about him. His eyes were darting left and right. With every step, he seemed to get more and more uneasy. It was a cold day, yet I saw beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. Hey there, can I help you? I asked in the friendliest voice I could muster. The man's expression was one of disdain, and I knew he looked down on me. Here for the delivery, he said, condescendingly. Oh, the box. Yeah, it's in the back of the van. Quite the order you got there. Stocking up for the holidays? I asked in a jolly manner. He said nothing. Instead, his eyes continued to stare me down. Well, the box, I continued in an awkward voice, and led the man to the market van. The moment I opened it up and he saw the cardboard box, his expression changed. His eyes grew wide and a hungry grin appeared on his face. I'd never seen anyone react like that to a couple dozen cans of soup. All right, let me just get this for you, and I broke up. One of the corners of the box had been damaged and torn open during transportation. I already saw that some of the packaging peanuts had spilled out from the hole. Ah, crap. I think the box was damaged during the trip here. Let me check real quick if everything's... That's not a problem, the man said, putting his hand on my shoulder. Sure, everything's all right. I felt awkward, squirming under the grip of his hand. Are you sure? Just carry it over to my car. He smiled at me, but there wasn't the smallest hint of emotion in it. I nodded. I freed myself from his hand, and I dragged the box in the van. The man went back to his car, opened the trunk, and waited for me to bring the box over. His face was angry, his expression urging me to get a move on. And that's precisely what I did. I wanted nothing more than to get this weird encounter over with. And then the box started to slip from my hands. I barely made it to his car before I lost my grip, and it toppled into the trunk. The already damaged side of the box tore open. An audible gasp escaped from the man next to me. Oh, God. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I started. But I broke up. Instead of cans of soup, something else spilled out from the box. At first, I didn't understand what I was staring at. Between a mass of packing peanuts, I saw something white. It was a small hand that dangled from the box. The hell? Before I could even say a word or ask what was going on, the guy quickly closed the trunk. I jerked at the sudden loud noise. For a moment, we both stared at each other in silence. Me completely bewildered by what I had just seen, him angry beyond anything. For a moment, I was afraid the guy would jump me, but instead he pushed me aside. In one fluid motion, he was back in the driver's seat of the car, and a moment later he drove off. I was left there, staring after his car. During the long trip back to our warehouse, I tried to convince myself that my eyes were playing tricks on me. There was no way there'd been a human being in that box. It had been getting dark. The guy had been creepy as hell, so my mind must have conjured up the image. I even laughed out loud to convince myself how ridiculous the idea was. But the laugh was hollow and fake. The heater in the car was turned to the max, yet I felt cold shivering in my seat. The moment I reached the warehouse, Martin was already waiting for me. I almost drove right past it, but his face was as jovial as usual. "Hey, man," he greeted me. "I was just checking up on a few things, so I thought I'd help you unload everything. How's the market? Any good?" Man, it was pretty shitty, to be honest. No customers at all." Well, can't be helped. Did the guy pick up his delivery?" "Yeah, everything went well," I blurted out almost a little too fast. A hint of suspicion showed on his face. It was gone in an instant. We unloaded the van, we talked and joked as usual, but the atmosphere was different. Something unspoken hung heavy in the air. Every once in a while, Martin's eyes lingered on me a bit too long. Neither of us said a word about the packing peanuts scattered in the back of the van. Instead, we simply unloaded the parts of the market stand and put the unsold cans of soup back into the warehouse. Once we were done, I gathered my things to get on my way to the nearby bus station. "Hey man, what's the rush? Let's go for a drink," Martin offered. I was about to decline and get the hell out of there, but a small voice in the back of my head told me that wouldn't fly tonight. "Sure, why not?" I answered, in as calm a voice I could muster. We drove to a nearby grocery store, got ourselves a beer each, and settled back in his car. While I stared at the bottle in my hand, Martin took a long sip of his beer. "Yeah, sorry, man," he finally said. "What do you—" I started. But when he looked at me, I knew instantly this was about the box. A deep sigh followed. "You know, I haven't been quite honest with you. Things haven't been going that well at all. It's all about online stores nowadays. No one goes to the weekly markets anymore." I nodded. "After taking over the company, I barely scraped by. With Maria and the kids at home, it wasn't enough." Once more I nodded, trying my hardest to keep my anxiety at bay. I couldn't tell Maria how bad things were. Just bought the new house. Couldn't even pay off the frickin' mortgage. I was looking for some serious trouble. So I started to do some research. I went to a few trade shows, talked to some of my dad's old contacts. Eventually I stumbled upon a few, alternate products. "And you started selling those on the side, right?" "Yeah." We both were quiet for a while, drinking our beer in silence. "Never imagined I'd be selling something like that. Friggin' sex dolls." "Sex dolls?" I blurted out. He stared at me for a moment before he started to explain. He'd gotten in contact with someone from Eastern Europe, Slovakia, to be precise. It was a company that specialized in anatomically correct sex dolls. They were perfect to the last detail. Smooth, soft skin, real hair, the whole deal. It's disgusting how close they are to the real deal, but there are people out there looking for just that. I took another sip of my beer. "So you're telling me that there was a sex doll inside that box? Isn't it a bit too small for that?" Martin's face turned dark. "Well, they make them in all sizes. There's some people out there who are willing to pay a bit extra for that." I knew what he was implying. Once more, I looked over at Martin. For so many years, I thought I knew him. I imagined him going home to his wife, tucking his 3 kids into bed, and in that moment, I felt sick to my stomach. Yeah, okay, well, I think it's time for me to... Hey, sorry again. God, I should have told you about this the whole damn time. The thing right from the start, right? I know it's sick. God, it's disgusting. We got bills to pay, you know? His eyes rested on mine. He was looking at me pleadingly. Yet, there was something darker, more twisted in his eye. Yeah, I guess you're right. Good night. Really gotta make it to the bus. Got another half hour ahead of me before I'm home. Yeah. Night. As I exited the car and I went on my way to the bus station, I could feel his eyes digging into the back of my head. I forced myself to walk away as normally and calmly as I could. Once I was on the bus, I lost it. And then the anxiety came back in full force. I had to clutch onto the seat in front of me to keep it at bay. I should have been calmed. I mean, Martin had explained the whole thing to me. Sure, it was messed up. Hell, it was probably illegal. But still, he was my best friend. But there was one more thing, though. An image that came back to my mind again and again. It's what I saw. Just moments before the man had closed the back of the trunk. I wanted to ask Martin about it. I wanted to confront him. But I'd been too afraid to do it. Why the hell had the hand of that sex doll moved? Thanks to everyone who was involved in the first post. I actually wrote the thing in just about 4 hours, start to finish, in a single sitting, because this has all been bottled up inside of me for a very long time, and I guess it finally just all came pouring out all at once. I think that, I'm actually genuinely afraid that, as scary as everything in this post was, it's just the foundation for something much bigger and weirder. Something that covers stretches of time we couldn't possibly have imagined and has consequences that may have already spread beyond my little hometown. So I'm telling you this up front because the first post was easy. It was just an absolutely insane, impossible childhood memory, and the equally impossible night years later. I wasn't trying to put anything together, connect any dots. Dots connected themselves. I just happened to be there. This next part's work. I decided I'm going to go back to my hometown, my childhood home, and confront my parents about that day when I was 9. When I first saw the columns, I have so many questions about that day. Questions that have lingered just below my conscious thoughts every day since then. And despite seeming to get a few answers that night, last Thanksgiving, most of what I discovered, or at least think I've discovered, is honestly just open up more questions. Both in general and about that day from my childhood. I could just call them and ask, but my parents were so evasive that day. I've been so silent about it in the years since. I genuinely don't trust them to give me any full, honest answers. It'd just be a lot easier to tell me if they were withholding information if I'm there in person looking them in the eyes. I need to know what my parents know. Especially what my dad knows. I need to know what he did that day, why he was wearing that absolutely bizarre outfit that was almost otherworldly in its inability to be described in any rational way. I need to know what was in that special suitcase he took to work with him. I need to know what that work consisted of. And after what I found underground last Thanksgiving, The bones, the obvious sight of not just one, but several sacrifices, maybe even mass sacrifices at the end of that platform or altar, or whatever it was. I need to know if my father was involved in the disappearances of the children that day when I was 9, and the subsequent disappearance last year when the Columns returned. Which brings me to another uncomfortable thing I need to confront. So I need to understand more about whatever the hell it is that is under my town. See, being down there, it was so clear at the time that whatever it was alive. Somehow, and impossible as that seems. Right now, far away from it, in the daylight, with no gigantic oppressive garden of towering concrete columns blocking out the sun. The notion of that seems absolutely ludicrous. I have no idea what it was, but I've never heard of anything like that. Not in actual biology or even cryptozoology I've been looking into ever since. There are barely any parallels in fiction, so it seemed to fit whatever the hell was down there, all those countless steps deep in the depths of the earth. Maybe some Lovecraft, but even then, there isn't much in the way of similarities as far as I can tell, at least. I'm so desperate. I'm looking into mythologies from around the world for anything. Any basis that I can work from. I'm getting off track. The point is that chamber, that giant impossible hollow, somewhere God knows how deep below my town, was being lit from below. Oh, I think it was being lit. Like I said in the post, whatever was coming through those cracks in the adobe floor allowed me to see, but I couldn't be sure if it was actually light. Couldn't be sure about pretty much anything that happened down there, including how much time passed while I was there. When I got back topside, it was clear that it had been maybe a few hours max, but down there it felt different. Time felt very different. And I have vague memories, almost just a collection of still images and indistinct feelings. Just, I was down there much, much longer than that. Point is, I don't feel like I can really trust my memories of that experience, but the one thing I'm most confident of is that when I shine my flashlight down on that horrifically tall, unwieldy tower of bones that moved from the relatively recent at the top to what appeared to be positively ancient near the bottom, my light struck that adobe floor. And I'm more positive about this than anything else I saw or experienced down there. The contact of the light with the floor is what threw its lazy, organic, rhythmic undulations into tense spasms that sent columns of adobe earth crashing the concrete ceiling of the chamber, and eventually produced the columns above ground that could be seen looming over every inch of town the next day. I did that. Whatever that thing down there was, whatever those columns were, I woke it up. And that's the most troubling thing of all. I know I'm responsible for them appearing the day after Thanksgiving last year, and it doesn't take a genius to make the connection that both times the columns have appeared, children in the town have gone missing, and with them, the columns. The columns were gone within a day of me stirring them as well. According to the girl's aunt, 7-year-old Tiffany Carter, Tiffany's mom, had refused to talk to the press or any family outside of those who live in town with her. It was denied that the girl was missing. Local police investigated and made the determination that Tiffany's mother was correct. The report of her disappearance was unfounded. But her aunt has been persistent. She's talked to anyone who'd listen. Told them that no one in the family has seen the girl for almost a year now, and that the mother and the police are lying. I don't know if that's true. But I saw enough that night last year to know something was very wrong, very evil, very, very secretive was going on here, enough so that it at least seems somewhat plausible that Tiffany's aunt could be correct. And if that's the case, if this child disappeared, and if the disappearance has something to do with the columns, and I'm the only one who caused the columns to rise over the town in the first place that day, then I am, at least to some extent, responsible for whatever may have happened to Tiffany Carter. And that thought kills me. Even so, I live silently with that guilt for almost a year now. it finally became too much. I wrote that first post to at least begin to get the story out there, selfishly, try to soothe my guilty conscience. But the process of going back through those memories, some of which I've repressed for quite a long time, awoke a deep desire within me to find answers, and some of you expressed a similar desire, which is good because I'm determined to get them. For Tiffany, for all of you. And selfishly, again, for myself. I haven't had the opportunity to go back home yet. But in the meantime, I've been following up on another line of inquiry that I'd actually started before posting the first entry. So a friend of mine from college, Jeremy, was a history major, and eventually he went to get a PhD and now teaches it at a school a few hours away from my town. He knows the area and its history pretty well, and incidentally is one of the friends who initially dragged me onto their urban explorations of abandoned places that eventually led me to be so brazen to break into the old municipal building. He's practically responsible for planting the seed that eventually sprouted into that night last Thanksgiving. Well, I got in touch with him about a week ago. We reminisced a bit about college, and about the abandoned places we explored, and I explicitly told him that one of my favorite things about the excursions was discovering the histories of the places that we explored, piecing together their stories, gathering new understanding of them. I told him that I'd explored a few places in my hometown, although I did leave out what I found in the basement of the municipal building. And everything below it. And I hinted that I would really appreciate knowing more about the story of my town and the land it was settled on. The kind of odd and strange things that wouldn't be in the town museum or a generic book about the area. Sorts of things that his research experience and knowledge of what kind of sources produce interesting results might turn up. And so the morning I made that first post, he got back to me. Left me a voicemail saying that he'd found something weird in the records of an indigenous tribe who lived near the area that the town now rests on today. I thought that was an oddly specific thing to stress, particularly in a short voicemail, that the tribe explicitly did not live where my town is today, only nearby. So, I called him. I actually recorded the call to make sure that I didn't miss anything, and so I didn't have to take notes. I could instead be free to focus on whatever he had to tell me. Gone back, I've transcribed the conversation, beginning at the relevant points. I did redact every use of my town's name because this is obviously a dangerous situation. People have gone missing. Don't want to do anything that might encourage others to put themselves in any kind of danger. I'm already caught in this. I don't want to drag anyone else down with me. So in your message, you said that you found something weird in some native records? I wouldn't call them weird. People who eventually settled didn't exactly get along well with the indigenous people in the area. Didn't get along well? Like how? They were fundamentalists. Violent fundamentalists. They did some bad things to people they found who weren't, white or Christian, like, massacre level bad. Fuck. That bad? Yeah, like bizarre mass lynchings. Things I've never heard of before. But not in the area where they settled. Yeah, okay, so that actually seems to be why they chose the location of the town. Because no tribes or other groups lived there, or even got very close to there. They definitely felt the people were more holy, or that the word was intact than other places, and I assume that's because there weren't other people carrying out what they considered to be a blasphemy on the land. I don't know for sure, though. The records on the reason for the town being founded, they aren't pretty clear. What I found was actually from a group that lived about 200 miles southwest of where the town stands today, which, is a pretty long ways away, especially for the 1800s. But it seems like the closest group recorded in any historical documents. Okay. But wait. Why aren't there any records? What I found on the town? Yeah. It's... Okay, well... I just mean it's not like the formal work of a historian or even an anthropologist or sociologist. Some oral histories, interviews really, taken from some missionaries who were trying to convert the tribe at the time, and their church, look, they preserved the interviews. It's not vetted. There's really nothing to prove that the interviews even happened, let alone that they're their contents are true, other than the existence of the interview transcripts themselves. I mean, hell, it could even be completely invented by the missionaries. Either as proof that they're doing their job when they were getting busy, drunk, in some bar hundreds of miles away from where they're supposed to be, or even manufactured as proof that the tribe was in dire need of the church's guidance. I mean, possibly in hopes of receiving more manpower or funding to continue their work. These things aren't even online. I had to go to the university's library, borrow the documents from the church to get my hands on them. I don't even ask how long that took to pinpoint. I mean, this one document is it's tiny-ass church.
So it could just be complete bullshit.
Oh, complete. Total bullshit. Especially considering I can't find anything to substantiate what the person being interviewed says. Like, at all. Nothing.
Then why even bother with it?
I mean, because it's weird as fuck. I mean, even weirder than the details about the lynchings that your founders did. And even if it's not true, it's pretty wild of a story about the land when you grew up, you know? Okay, it reminds me of breaking into places with you and Rachel and Eric and making up our own stories of why the abandoned places were like that, even if they weren't true. Even if we were completely off base, they were still fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so nostalgia then.
Yeah, nostalgia, I guess.
Okay, so what is it?
Okay, well, the missionary talked to a group of these tribe elders, trying to get a sense of where the tribe fit in amongst the other Great Plains tribes. So they asked the elders to recount the tribe's history. It was all pretty standard. Their people had been on that land. I mean, the land they were on at the time of the interview, not the land where the town is today, because, to be clear, records show they never got closer than a couple hundred miles to the area. So, on that land, for thousands of years, living as most people indigenous to the area did. Small communities that hunted, fished, gathered crops. Then around 700 years ago, the missionaries figured that it would have been around 1300 CE. Those loose connections of communities came together to create a singular government, becoming the tribe as the missionaries found it.
That sounds normal.
Yeah, so far. But the tribe was threatened by a larger tribe to the west. Now, that's actually what prompted the communities to get together in the first place, even together, though, they were still much smaller and were fearful that they could be, for lack of a better word, conquered by this neighboring tribe to the west. So, they reached out for more far-flung communities, inviting them to their tribe, basically trying to bolster their numbers. Here's where the weird starts, though. According to the elders, a woman and her 3 children showed up one day, and they said they'd come from the northeast, from a large community that was located just about where the town is today.
But you said there weren't any records of people living there before. You said that's why the settlers chose that land in the first place.
See, that's the thing. There isn't. Nothing other than this one interview by some missionaries. This is the only mention of it anywhere I can find, which is why I think this could be complete bullshit. I mean, there's never only one singular, deeply esoteric record of something like a large indigenous community that supposedly lived someplace for thousands of years.
Wait, hold on. Thousands of years?
Yeah, so the woman said her people had lived on that land where the town is today for thousands of years. That their ancestors trace their history back to the beginning of the world.
Is that normal? That sort of mythology about an indigenous group?
Yes and no. See, some groups, they do claims like that. Others say they descended from people who came from far away. It's honestly not a big deal.
Okay, so what is the big deal?
Okay, so this woman said she left, that she made this couple 100-mile journey on foot with 3 young children because her people were going to kill her kids.
So is that
normal? No, not at all. These people weren't, I fucking hate this word, savages. They're nothing like most of the depictions you see in movies and shit. I mean, most of their communities and tribes were more civilized than ours are today. So no, that's not normal at all.
So, did she say why they were going to kill her kids?
Yeah. Okay, so that's where it gets to the second reason why I think this is probably completely fabricated. So she told the tribe that her community had, for lack of a better word, a king. I say chief, but that doesn't really mean the same thing as what she's talking about. So she's not talking about a political leader or someone that the people look up to and follow. She's talking about more of an absolute dictator. You do exactly what the king says or you die. The way she talks about the king is absolutely without precedent for indigenous groups on the continent at the time. It doesn't fit with anything that we know. The actual word could be used more closely translated to foundation. But in context, that word doesn't make sense. King is as close as I can get.
You translated foundation to mean king.
Yeah, no, it's weird.
So that's the weird thing. They have this foundation king thing.
It's only weird for the area. I mean, there aren't any records of any of the tribes having a leader like that around that time, but that's not the weird part I'm talking about. It's only weird to me. I knew you wouldn't care. There's more, and this is where you might get more interested. So she doesn't describe the king, the foundation, in any significant detail, but she makes it clear that they don't look at it as a person. She talks about it like it's a thing. A massive, massive thing. Controls everything and everyone that lives where it is. She said the king stretched from an incredible distance, easily the size of the town, maybe a lot bigger. And it towered over everything, literally towered. She said it stretched from below the earth up to the heavens.
The heavens?
Yeah. She said different parts of it were under the earth, but it also had all these parts that came up and kept going until you couldn't see the tops of them anymore. That it did that to remind the people of how powerful it was, that it was above them. And so naturally, the people did what anyone would do back then. They worshipped it as a god. They credited it with everything good and bad that happened to them. She said that it even showed them things. Showed them everything, whatever that means. Visions, I guess. Eventually, they didn't even seem to really draw a distinction between whatever the thing was and the actual land they were living on. Eventually, they seemed to consider them one and the same, which is how the sacrificing started.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so she said their crops and hunts were good. They believed it was due to the thing's benevolence, to the thing being happy with them, and when things were bad, they believed that the thing was pissed at them. One year, a disease broke out in the group, and a number of the children died. They buried their bodies, as they always did, and the next spring, she said the crops that hadn't been planted grew all around the place where the kids had been buried. That's how they made the connection. The dead kids equaled happy gods, so they continued. And whenever they needed a good harvest, a particularly successful hunt, they sacrificed a child, and they got the good hunt. They got the good harvest, whether by luck, that's the word for it, or by something else. Their belief that this thing controlled their lives and that it wanted dead kids kept getting reinforced. But eventually a drought struck, and the crops died, and the animals went somewhere else for water. And the group got desperate. So they started killing all the children. Just a mass slaughter of their own kids. This woman said that she fled hundreds of miles on foot with her 3 children to spare their lives.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. And her story sounds ridiculous. Even if she was real, because when the tribe heard about the community that she'd come from, they decided to go and try to convince them to join their new nation. The woman begged them not to do it, but they went anyway. A couple elders and several strong men with a lifetime of experience tracking and living in the wilds of the plains left on a journey to find the community. Now, according to what the elders told the missionaries, the party never returned. A second party went out a couple seasons later, looking for the original one, and they did eventually come back, although without the first group. Now, when they came back, they reported finding in the approximate area the woman had described, a gigantic, flattened piece of ground, covered completely in some kind of hard clay. From the description, it sounds like maybe adobe clay, stretching so far that you couldn't see where it stopped.
Adobe?
Yeah. So it's like a clay that...
I know what it is. Keep going.
So anyway, okay. So anyway, this is it. This is the crazy. The party that returned said that they saw these gigantic pillars or columns of adobe sticking out of the ground in a pattern, some sort of regular arrangement. They said the pillars were massive, immeasurable, and they stretched to the heavens above.
No, that's...
Wait, there's more. They said they found people. Bodies, rather. They couldn't tell how many there were, if it was the first party or people who had been living on the land.
They couldn't recognize their own people?
No, not because of the way the bodies were. They described the bodies as being somehow impaled on the sides of the pillars, several feet off the ground. All in the same position, together and down, arms outstretched like they'd been crucified to the columns. That's not even the weird part.
The hell?
They said the faces on the bodies, I don't know, they were missing. That where their faces should be, they were just dark black holes.
Like their faces had been dug, like they were just dug out of their heads?
No, not exactly. They specifically said they couldn't see what you'd normally see inside a head. That when they looked into the holes, they saw something else.
What?
Stars. The night sky. Fucking space. A few even said they saw constellations they recognized. And that the space they saw inside each person's, well, I guess you could say face, was different. Like it was a different perspective or view of space.
Jesus.
Yeah. See, I've never heard anything like that before. The party said that they got lost looking into the faces, that they lost time, maybe days, staring into those maws where faces used to be. They were transfixed by them, thought they were a view into heaven, but they were also terrified. And once they were able to pull themselves away, they got out of there as fast as they could. They said as they were leaving, they saw a hole in the ground, large rectangular hole like a doorway on the floor, with steps leading down. None of them dared go in, they just kept going. And the few they could still speak reported what they seen. According to the elders, none of the second party were ever the same. Several took their own lives in the days that followed their return. The elders said that after that, they never sent another group in that direction.
Yeah, that sounds really crazy.
I mean, at least that's what the missionaries said in their notes about the interview.
Yeah, do you believe it?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of reasons not to, including that the scene described near the end doesn't even sound possible.
Yeah. I mean, but do you, personally think it could be true?
I don't know. Man, history's filled with weird shit. All stuff that any rational person would swear couldn't possibly be true, except that it was. We know it was because we have several accounts from separate, reliable sources. We don't have that here. All we have is this weird shit that one questionable source citing another source that, well, honestly may not even exist.
Yeah. It does sound impossible, doesn't it?
It sounds like a horror movie. Like some really messed up horror movie, not the kind of thing that ever happens. There's so much impossible stuff in it, man. I believe the woman, if she was real, fled because she was worried about her children. Now, I don't know if I believe the community was sacrificing all its kids into some sort of, I don't know what. And I can't possibly believe that there was this place covered as far as you could see with adobe. And first of all, because that's impossible. Second of all, because that sort of building material wasn't really used by the Great Plains tribes. They were more into using wood and animal skin and that sort of thing. Adobe requires a certain soil composition, which wasn't available in the region. So the concept of having a massive amount of it covering an area is just impossible. Also, I mean, who would put it there? Why? Obviously the pillar column thing stretched to heaven, and the holes in people's heads, what you could see into space, that's all insane. Maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe the party thought they saw something that they didn't see. Maybe what they really saw is lost in the translation. And maybe they made it all up. Maybe the missionaries made it all up. I don't know. There's so many ways that craziness could have ended up in the document that I read, but the only way I know it didn't get there is by any actually happening.
Yeah, so... But just out of curiosity, which church were the missionaries from? I mean, who kept copies of their interview notes?
The missionaries are from a church in St. Louis, Protestant, and originally their records were kept there, but they were eventually moved to a different church, which is actually how I found out. I mean, after I couldn't find out much of the interest in the normal places, I turned to some more unorthodox sources. Churches sometimes have interesting records from the town going all the way back to their founding. It was I pulled it up on Google Maps. I think it's in downtown. Some same block as the old municipal building you said your dad worked at. And it was perfect because the church is actually as old as the town itself. Both founded 1845. So it worked out that...
Okay, so all this information was in town. Why was it moved there?
I don't know for sure. But it looks like Matthias Grunder was a regular at the church in St. Louis.
And wait, Matthias Grunder? My town's founder?
Yeah, that guy. So I guess he brought some documents from St. Louis Church when he went out and founded the town. He actually found the first church too, so he probably used the documents on top of that. And then he just kept them, in the archive there.
Okay, so the guy who eventually settled on that land knew about the interview.
I mean, maybe. He took a lot of stuff with him. I don't know how much he knew himself, but he would have had access to it, yeah.
You don't think it played a role in choosing that location for settlement, do you?
Nah, like one crazy story? I mean, I doubt it. If anything, maybe the part about how there was no native people in the area might have attracted him. Once he had his second kid, born blind, just like his first, he seemed to get tired of massacring indigenous populations, and I think he probably just wanted to get away from all that and try to find some peace. I mean, not that he deserved it. That's probably what he was seeking.
There was more to the conversation after that, but it's not worth bringing up here. For that point on, it felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, like the wind had been knocked out of me. Everything he told me, everything that he thought sounded ridiculous and fake sounded far too real to me. I spent the last 10 months trying to convince myself that my childhood memories, even my memories from Thanksgiving last year, were somehow wrong. That I'd been incredibly mistaken and confused and made dreams into reality. That what I thought was real was just the symptoms of some mental illness because that would honestly be preferable. I would prefer the truth be that I was sick, that my town had been quietly murdering children for decades, maybe more than a century. But what Jeremy had unearthed was proof that it wasn't. That I was completely, painfully, hopelessly sane. Jesus, that a century of child murder might only be a tiny sliver of the actual magnitude. My God. I mean, that church where this information was kept was as old as the town itself. Most of the founders were probably members. If they were following in the footsteps of that lost tribe, the interview document, it would have given them an instruction manual, a step-by-step how-to guide. That's how they knew. That's how they knew what to do, how to put the system in place that is evidently still functioning to this day. But why? Why settle there, knowing the price they would have to pay? Surely there were other places they could have chosen, other parcels of land that they could have worked for their needs. What exactly were their needs? I need to know more about the Matthias Grunders. There's definitely something there. I mean, there's questions. You'll have to wait because for now I have to deal with something much more personal, more painful. Everything I thought I remembered did actually happen. Tiffany Carter was actually missing, probably dead. And speaking of which, when I was 9 and the columns appeared, 6 children disappeared before the columns receded. The woman's story from the interview seemed to cite several examples of killing multiple children to satisfy whatever the hell that thing is. So was this time different? Was only one child necessary, or is Tiffany just the only victim whose name somehow escaped my town's event horizon? How many children did I endanger that night? Under the old municipal building. I don't think I can sleep. This has been a lot for me. It's hard to revisit conversation, to transcribe it, to go through the horror of realizing how massive this thing is, that I found myself involved in this. And honestly, it took me a couple days to get it down. Written out in that time, something really strange happened. I received a package this afternoon, no return address. Small. A little bigger than a brick. Heavy as one. I opened it to find a single piece of concrete, obviously broken off of some larger structure, and on it, in a perfect type, as though the concrete was poured into a mold. To cast it, there were the words, "I dreamed of you." I have no idea what it means. Who would send it? I searched the tracking number of the shipping label. The origin came from my hometown. I have no idea what it means. I'm scared. I'm really scared. Because it seemed like, I've been looking into this whole thing, whatever it is. Someone or something has been looking back at me. Apologies for the delay. When I posted the last 3 entries, my grandpa was elated. We spent too much time going over the comments, and it brought him joy that I haven't seen in a long time. His health took a brief turn for the worst in the recent weeks, and he made me promise to not post any more transcriptions of our conversations without him being able to sit down with me and watch the comments roll in, so I kept that promise. Luckily, he's back to where he was when we started this whole thing, which still isn't great, but it's better than he has been recently. So I'm proud to present the 4th impossible case. It's not always people, the impossible ones weren't limited to just people. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe we caught a call, suspected murder had taken place. Mail had filled up the mailbox. Eventually, someone called the police for a wellness check. Well, some uniforms go to check. They look through the window and they see blood on the living room carpet and the walls. They go in, clear the house. We get called. I remember the phone call. The same as the calls from the impossible cases. Yeah, we know it's another one that we get. So you could always tell how crappy our day was going to be by the tone of voice of whoever called us. It was me and a temporary partner I had, this guy Malloy. He'd come over from across the state, but like every detective, he was familiar with the impossible ones. Though he said that at his last shop, they were referred to as the unexplained. Different names, same mind-boggling bullshit. Anyway, so we pull up at the house and we find everyone standing outside. Get outside of the car, thinking they're just trying to preserve the scene. And then we see that everyone is really on edge. Jumping when we shut the doors, staring at the ground, just acting real antsy. We ask them what's going on. No one says a word. Go around asking if the house has been cleared. Finally, uniformed, looks like his first day on the job. Nods his head a bit. Malloy and I go into the house, looks normal, just a normal suburban house. There's a stain on the living room carpet. It's very clearly blood. Made all the more obvious by the fact there was blood dripping from the ceiling. Now, you ever see a ceiling with flood damage? It looks like dropping a feather on it from some other side is going to make it come crashing down. That's how the spot above the stain was. It was dark and it was red. Looked thin as wet tissue. Obviously, I think there must have been a body upstairs. And based on the call we got and how the folks outside were acting, we were expecting something real, something real gruesome. So we go upstairs, figure out which room the stain is below. And then when we walk in, there's nothing. Room's normal. About 2 seconds after we open the door, that's when we first hear it. Tap, 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 tap. The best way I can describe it, it's like they're tapping their pinky, and half a second later, their ring finger, and the middle finger, index, thumb, boom, 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 real fast. Malloy and I, we both spin around. It sounded like someone was tapping on the wall in the room across the hall from one of the ones we were in. And now the door to that room is closed. So we'd been informed that this woman, she lived by herself, didn't have any kids, no husband, and not even any family that lived in the state, so there shouldn't be anyone else there. And Malloy and I draw our weapons. Start doing the whole open the door, show us your hands, yada yada, that thing. No one responds. We stand there long enough with our weapons pointed at the wall. I was pointing at the door. Malloy had his train on the wall. We stand there long enough, I don't hear anything back. I start to wonder if we heard something. The others, like from maybe outside or something. And the unis had cleared the house. Never done us wrong before, but with how weird they were acting, we wanted to be sure. Just as I start to take a step to pass Malloy and move towards the other room, we hear it again. Tap, 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 tap. Only this time it sounds like it's from the room on the other side of the wall from the one we're in. On the same side of the hall, just a door down. I yell out, "Police! Step out in the hallway with your hands up!" And again, no response. Tap, 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 tap. This one comes from the opposite wall from the previous one, which would put whoever was doing it on the stairs leading upstairs. Malloy was still standing in the doorway, so he took a step and leaned over to take a look. He looked over at me and he shook his head. There wasn't anyone there. Next set of taps, same pattern, come from above us, like in the attic. Then higher up on the wall by the stairs, then down the hall, then from underneath my feet, like someone was tapping on the ceiling in the living room, then back on the wall in the opposite room, over and over and over and over and over. It sounded like a miniature stampede was happening all around us. It lasted about 30 seconds, then as quickly as it started, it just stopped. And Malloy and I, we stayed there for a good 10 minutes, guns up, arms aching, wondering what the hell was going on. When we both finally calmed down enough to act rationally, we went through and we cleared the house again, attic, top floor, ground floor, basement. We did it ourselves just to make sure that it got done thoroughly, and there was no one. House was empty, except for us. Then we have to deal with the fact that the ceiling in the living room is leaking blood, but there doesn't seem to be a source. Bathroom where the leak should have been, where the body should have been. There's a throw rug in there, over the hardwood floor. So you move the rug. There's this little door type thing, I guess you'd call it, a little door in the floor, the size of a pack of cigarettes. It's a hinge that's flush with the floor. I open it, I shine a flashlight in, there's nothing in there. There's no source of where the blood could be coming from. Even after we had some guy come in and take out the floorboards, I took out the insulation, it was dry. Material that made up the ceiling, while it was soaked with blood on the bottom of it, it was completely dry on top. Which, I mean, it's impossible. It's like the source of the blood was in between a half-inch thick piece of plaster. That was a hell of a long day, I'll tell you. So it's late now, it's probably like 2:30 in the morning. Malloy and I were still in the house looking around. We finally got a few people to come in, the fingerprint folks, photographers. They get their job done. And me and Malloy are standing in the kitchen. He goes, "Do you hear that?" I did hear a thing. He goes, "There it is again." And I hadn't heard a thing. He goes, "There it is again." I'm straining my ears to try to hear what he's hearing. So I turn to look at him and I ask what he's hearing. I won't lie to you, my heart skipped a beat. See, Malloy was standing. So he was standing there, he was staring straight ahead into my eyes, but it was like he was looking through me. His face had gone completely limp, slack. And his eyes looked like they'd been turned off, like there was no life behind him. His mouth hung open like he was just totally brain dead. "Malloy?" I said. He stared through me. The point that I looked over my shoulder to make sure no one was behind me. When I turned back, Malloy was pointing to the basement door. They looked over, saw that it was closed. When I looked back again, Malloy was pointing, but the life had returned to his face. He looked normal. I asked Malloy what the hell had happened. He just said, "You didn't hear that?" I told him I hadn't. He said he needed to check the basement again. So we head over, we open the door. Only now the lights wouldn't turn on. And they worked fine the entire day, but all of a sudden now, nothing. We got our flashlights out, we head down. Ask him why we're checking the basement again. He just kept saying, "We need to check the basement again. You didn't hear that?" So we get down there and everything looks the same as it had. Same as it had all day. Tap, 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 tap. Sounds, tapping sound, like they were against one of the metal racks that lined the basement walls. We shine our light all around. There's nothing. No one. Tap, 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 tap. This time it sounds like it's on the cardboard box. "You didn't hear that?" Malloy says again. Tapping starts all around us. It's on the metal, it's on the cardboard, it's on the plastic, the wall, drywall, the wood, the plaster. It gets to the point that it's deafening. I shine my light all around. It eventually lands on Malloy, who at some point moved to the corner. He had the same dead look on his face again, and he was pointing towards the ceiling just behind me. Now, I consider myself a brave man, right? But in that moment, I was about as scared as I could have been. See, I didn't want to look behind me. Felt like something was there, looking at me, waiting for me to turn around. "You didn't hear that?" Malloy says again. "You didn't hear that? You didn't hear that? You didn't hear that? You didn't hear that?" He just kept repeating it over and over and over. And he started slurring his words like he'd sound if he'd been drunk. And I'm yelling at him to shut his mouth, scared out of my mind. And so there's already been a lot of this that it makes you scratch your head, and you say, "What the hell?" And then I work up the courage enough to turn around and Malloy was still repeating that over and over, but I turn around and I look up towards where he was pointing. And there's this spot in the plaster in the basement ceiling that was newer than the rest of it. Same size as the little door on the floor of the second level. We'd been through the house more times than I can remember. Neither of us had noticed that door till now, which seemed unlikely. The tapping seems to be getting louder, faster. So I got Malloy yelling over and over. I'm so afraid. I think I might piss myself. I'm so afraid. It gets so loud I cover my ears and start hunching over. I mean, it sounds like you could have heard it on the other side of the neighborhood. Then it stopped again. Look over to Malloy. I saw him sobbing into his hands. He walked up the basement stairs without saying a word. I wanted to get the hell out of there, but at the same time, I didn't want to skimp on my duties. So I yelled up the stairs for a few of the construction guys to come down and take down that piece of plaster that the spot was on. Then unscrew the screws when the side of the piece is lower than the others. It's lower than the others. A little bag slides out, falls to the floor. The bag has fingers in it. 3 fingers. I remember right. They were an index, a ring, and a pinky finger. We eventually went back upstairs, and when we did, there were spots like the ones in the basement all over the place. The ceiling in the living room had stopped bleeding, but when we had more of these spots, must have been 5 or 6 on each level of the house. Inside each was bags of fingers, former pinky to thumb. We had them all tested, and far we could tell, at least some of them belonged to previous owners of the house, going back decades. Turns out everyone who lived in that house had died. One of them was by suicide, the rest were natural causes. It was odd. All the fingers were in perfect condition, like they'd just been removed from the body. Decomp hadn't even started yet. Doesn't make goddamn sense. Malloy, that poor bastard, he quit the job the following day, refused to talk about what he had going on in his head during all that day. He tried to commit suicide twice that I know of.
Now he lives with his daughter in Monterey, California. A few years after that day, I tried to check in on him from time to time, and he would apparently have these fits where he just screams, "You didn't hear that? You didn't hear that?" over and over. I was supposed to go back to the house a few days later. I showed up, and when I got to the front door, I just couldn't do it. The fear set in again. I feel like I was going to pass out. I knew right from the jump this one didn't have an answer. I still did my due diligence. I did what I could to find some answers, but I refused to go back to that house. And the woman who lived there, the neighbor down the street had seen her walk in the morning that we got the call. Well, several days after she'd stopped getting her mail for whatever reason, even though she was apparently home, she walked down the street and onto the main road, and we tracked her security tapes, but she turned the corner from North Avenue to 92nd Street, just vanished. Poof. In thin air. I wondered for a long time what happened to her. Then one day, after 7 years later, we got a tape in the mail. It had been sent to the precinct, addresses of both me and Malloy. It was a security tape from a gas station. Timestamp was a day after we'd been to her house, so the day that she'd vanished about 2 hours ago. And across the street from the gas station, some folks were doing some tree work. A woman who walked up the area, these folks were doing the work. She set her purse down, her ID on top of it. She leaned forward. And she just goes head first into the wood chipper. Yeah. Messed up, right? Yeah. Even more messed up than that, the tape came from a gas station in Florida. It's about 1,200 miles. Never did figure out how she got from the corner of 92nd and north to Tampa Bay, Florida in under 2 hours. I should probably tell you about the very first impossible case I ever had.
The Secret Doctors of NASA is a series of memoirs, diaries, and reports
from actual doctors employed by an undisclosed arm of NASA between 1970 and 2001. These writings contain true accounts of the unusual and often highly classified medical conditions experienced by an astronaut during and after their space missions. Following the defunding of the clandestine medical program after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack, the majority of these accounts were lost, forgotten, on tape drivers in a NASA storage facility. In 2016, a former intern whose job was to clean out one of these facilities discovered them. 2 years later, he's ready to release what he found. A dentist discovery. Arnold F. A. DDS, August 4th, 1989.
I met the astronaut after a half-year mission on the Russian space station. He'd gone through his preliminary post-landing physical, but complained about pain in his jaw and gums. His health, aside from those complaints, were fair. So it was my job to find out what was wrong with him before moving him to the next specialist. The urologist, I think. The orders always change. The patient was in decent spirits when we met, although I could tell something was on his mind. See, we chatted for a little bit. Turned out he'd been working on the Feng Li discovery. My heart sank. See, when Feng and Li discovered what they initially called the Venus Tic Tacs in 1982, no one in the know was surprised. Just another alien organism to add to the list of hundreds. A team formed to conduct research and determine its risks and benefits. There was no expectations that anything would come of it. As is so often the case, those in the know knew nothing. Give those Venus Tic Tacs an electric shock in the right place for the right amount of time, and what do you get? Pluripotent stem cells. They had the potential to become a game changer in the field of regenerative medicine.
I don't think anybody expected to discover them when we did. All the data we had showed that we were at least a decade away from inducing pluripotency. I mean, hell, we assumed civilian doctors might figure them out first. This was big, capital B. Now, in dentistry, it meant we might be able to regrow missing teeth, reverse jaw deterioration. I followed the studies with great interest. Animal tests were successful. New teeth, better jaws, nice smiles all around. Success. Good. Great. The researchers moved on to human subjects. Failure. Nothing. Zilch. No reason. No goddamn reason whatsoever. No one could figure out why there was a 100% success with animal subjects and 0% with people. Cells wouldn't grow at all. Then a doctor named Franco, who'd been on the team since the beginning, suggested they try using the Tic Tac cells on people in space. But he didn't give a reason. I don't think he had one. Probably something like, well, screw it. It doesn't work here. Try it up there. So we did. It worked. Sort of. See, the effects were different for everyone. Sometimes cavities were repaired. Sometimes jawbones grew again. Then, again, sometimes teeth fell out and jaws collapsed. That's what happened to Jose. See, nobody wanted to use Venus Tic Tacs again. That's why, when this astronaut came to me with pain in his gums and jaw and told me that he'd been working on the Feng Li discovery, I was less than thrilled with what I'd find. There'd been a 6-year moratorium on Venus Tic Tacs human experimentation since the Jose incident, and it'd only been lifted a year ago. Apparently someone on the team wanted to pick it up right where they'd left off. But while I talked to the astronaut, he informed me that there'd been new research on the Tic Tacs. I frowned, told him I wasn't aware of anything new. He filled me in. Apparently, there'd been some civilian advances in stem cell technology that ended up contributing to our own knowledge of the science. So, new experiments were drawn up. Plausibility was determined, and one of the team leaders impressed the brass at NASA's ethics division. That, combined with the limited number of Venus Tic Tacs that have been recovered, and the uncertainty surrounding how much longer they'd be alive, ended the moratorium. That was all well and good. See, at that point, I hadn't looked into the astronaut's mouth. Before we started chatting, I had my assistant do an x-ray of his jaw. They developed while we were talking. Now, they were ready. I'm gonna digress for a second. Have you ever seen what a child's skull looks like before their adult teeth have come in? And it's unsettling. Okay? Look at this. That was all of us at one point. I've been a dentist for the last 36 years. Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of crazy stuff, but just thinking about all those holes makes me uneasy. Some things just stick with you, I guess. So why am I mentioning this? Okay. So this astronaut, right? This grown man had what looked like new teeth forming above his adult ones. Now, I consulted with the x-rays that we took before the mission. There was nothing unusual about them, just filled cavities, mild bone loss in his jaw that had made him a test candidate for the Tic Tac cells. Now, as I stared at the new x-ray, I saw the cavities. They were still there. The jaw still decaying, but those dark smudges on the x-ray, those indicated new teeth deep in there. I'd never seen anything like it. I remained professional. I asked him to lean back, open his mouth so I could begin the examination. And as I took my first look, I knew something was dreadfully wrong. His gums were puffy and they bled at the slightest touch. His teeth, they looked gray, as if they hadn't been brushed in God knows how long. Okay, it didn't make sense. I swung the magnifying over and brightened the light, and I think you heard me stifle a gasp when I looked through. His teeth, they were covered in these infinitesimal holes. They were much smaller than regular cavities. Okay? I looked closer. Each of the holes had a tiny tiny pink hair sticking out of its center. I touched the tip of my instrument to one of the hairs. It recoiled back into the tooth. At this point, I was getting uneasy, okay? I asked the astronaut if what I did hurt. He told me it did, but not bad. So I decided to numb the gums around the top of his teeth. When I waited for the Novocaine to take effect, I studied his molars. Those had bigger holes with thicker growths, and when I reached for one of them with my instrument, rather than slip back into the tooth, the hair extended about 1/4 of an inch and it wrapped around the metal tip. The astronaut, he didn't seem to feel it. I gave the instrument a gentle tug. Nothing. Pulled harder. Still, barely using any force, the molar came out. My patient gasped. I apologized profusely. I stopped what I was doing. I put the instrument and the tooth out of his line of sight. I decided to level with him. I told him there was some severe damage to his teeth. Man, I decided to level with him. I told him there was some severe damage to his teeth. I didn't know what it was. I said I needed to do more exploratory work. It'd be likely very uncomfortable. Astronaut did his best to take it in stride. He told me that he knew something was very, very wrong from the moment when he brushed his teeth on the space station and the bristles would get caught inside the holes. The thought made me shudder. Anyway, so I numbed his mouth best I could, got to work. And by the end of it, I accidentally caused 9 of his teeth to fall out. All that remained in their places were those bizarre the pink hairs. So I sent him back to base with an appointment for the next day. Gonna remove the rest of his teeth. I felt terrible for the guy. I got a call in the middle of the night from the head of the medicine at the NASA hospital. I had to come there right away. The astronaut's roommate had called emergency services an hour or so ago. He was in excruciating pain. He was bleeding from the mouth. I arrived at the hospital in about 10 minutes. I expected to be able to go right in, see the patient, but I was stopped by security and the head of medicine. So he instructed me to put on a clean room suit. Yeah. Right then I knew something was deeply wrong. I donned the suit, followed the head into one of those 2 observation areas above a hermetically sealed operating room. So I looked at one of the television screens showing the astronaut's mouth. My stomach churned. All the man's teeth, they'd fallen out in their place. In the place, growing out of his gaping, bloody gums, there were these swirling tangles of the pink hairs. I watched as the surgeons grasped one of the tangles in a pair of forceps and pulled. And pulled. A doctor held the astronaut's head while the surgeon put his weight into the effort. With the sound of a heavy piece of brush being pulled from the ground, the tangles gave way. They writhed at the end of the forceps. The one still in his mouth stretched out as if they were trying to take it away and bring it back. Surgeon dropped the veiny clot into a bowl and the camera zoomed in on it. And at the top of the tangle was something solid, something that I realized looked very, very much like one of the new teeth. The one that was deep inside that astronaut's jawbone. The one I'd seen on the x-ray that afternoon. Now out and exposed to the light, I saw that it wasn't a tooth. It wasn't a tooth at all. It was a brand new Venus Tic Tac. The first one we'd ever discovered outside of Venusian meteorite. So the issue of the pluripotent stem cells and whether or not they'd benefit human subjects is still a mystery. And after all the surgery, my patient is in a coma. As a human being, I write this with a heavy heart. As a scientist, though, see, I have some hope. Maybe even a little excitement. Thanks to that poor astronaut. Now we know how to breed new Venus Tic Tacs. Perhaps, someday. Someday we'll learn how to use them. End of report.
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and we are back after Halloween. So, I want to give a big thank you to my Patreons. Those specifically are the ones that are in the description, and Joey Gilbert, Daniel Polson, Trace Miles, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Wayne Milstead, Chumpinski, Ken Lando Higuchi, Brianna Tine-Janzen, Buddy Burrows, Stephen Van House, Tristan Pelton, G Weevil 3, Asia, the Red Oak Shield Virus, Sandy Barney, Nico Ko, Caleb Dougal, Dante Rao, Last Blade Song, The Ginger Bros, Don Mewmeister, Eliminator 86, Nebsky, Alex, Steampunk Sinner, The Rafael Rodriguez, Optimistic Avocado, and Dr. Strawberry. If you guys would like to join them, you can always head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. Even helping with $1 actually helps keep me alive. So, a big thank you to all of you who are there from $1 all the way up to however much that you guys give. Thank you. I appreciate you guys subscribing and checking back with the channel every single day because, dear Lord help me, we are on daily uploads, meaning new horror stories from me here at Mr. Creepypasta on YouTube or Mr. Creepypasta on Spotify. Sweet dreams, kids.